Hi Oak learners, I have got a very special Chinese folktale to tell you today, which is about these two characters, Mr. and Mrs. Haktak. Now this is an old folktale, which means it's been told lots and lots of times, again and again. And so I'm going to tell you the story, but I'm going to use some of the pictures, some of the illustrations in the book to show you what is happening. And I've also got a few bits and pieces here, some different objects that are going to help us to tell the story. So make sure you're sitting comfortably and we will begin. So, once upon a time, a long time ago, there lived an old man called Mr. Haktak and his wife, Mrs. Haktak. Mr. and Mrs. Haktak were very poor, which meant they didn't have very much money to buy food. All they had to eat were the vegetables that they could grow in their garden. Well, early one morning, Mr. Haktak went out into the garden and was digging with his spade. As he was digging, his spade hit something hard in the soil. How odd, thought Mr. Haktak. So he dug down a little bit deeper until he discovered a big metal pot. That's interesting, thought Mr. Haktak. I wonder where that's come from. And he decided to carry it home to show Mrs. Haktak. But because it was very heavy, on his way, he tripped and stumbled. And into the pot fell his money purse, which had 5 coins in. Shall we have a look and see? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And his purse with the 5 coins in fell into the pot. When he got the pot home to show Mrs. Haktak was not sure what to do with this big pot. It's much too big to cook in, she said, and it's too small to have a bath in. As she looked inside the pot, something happened. There you go, can you see her? One of her lovely hairbands fell into the pot. I'm going to add that to the pot. There we go. Pop that one in. Oh dear, I've dropped my hairband inside, she said. So she decided to put her hand into the pot to get it out. And when she put her hand in, she pulled out her hairband. But another hairband came out too. That's very strange, thought Mrs. Haktak. 1 hairband fell in and 2 came out. So she looked a little bit closer. This time when she put her hand in, she pulled out not 1 money pot for Mr. Haktak, but 2. And each one had 5 coins inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that one, let's pop those back in. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that one. Double 5. That is very strange, thought Mr. and Mrs. Haktak. Something funny is going on. Mr. Haktak was so excited he started to jump up and down. He decided he wanted to try and put something else into the magic pot. So he ran around and he searched for something and he found his winter coat. I know, Mrs. Haktak, I'm going to put my winter coat into the pot. So sure enough, Mr. Haktak put his winter coat into the pot. And when he put his hand inside, he pulled out 1 winter coat and then another winter coat. look at that. 2 winter coats came out of the pot. This is amazing, said Mr. Haktak. Next, they searched the house for other things to put inside the magic pot. Everything that they put in, when they put in 1, 2 came out. Oh, if only we had some delicious cake to put in, said Mrs. Haktak. I know what we can do. I've got an idea of how we can get whatever we want, said Mrs. Haktak. All we need to do is to put our money purses with our coins into the pot, and then we'll get more money out, and then we can buy whatever we like. So Mr. Haktak put in 2 money purses into the box, into the pot. What do you think is going to come out? This time he pulled out 1, 2, 3, 4 money purses. My goodness, this is amazing. They were so excited that they stayed up all night putting more and more money into the pot. And the more money they put in, the more money they got out. Until by the end of the night, the whole house was filled with coins that they pulled out from the pot. Well, early the next morning, Mr. Haktak decided to take some of their new money to the market to buy some new things to eat and some new things for their house. And when he got to the market, he used the money to buy all sorts of exciting things. Whilst he was coming back from the market, Mrs. Haktak leaned over with the new pot and gave it a really big hug. She was so pleased that it had arrived and come into their life. But unfortunately, as she was leaning over to give the pot a big hug, she lost her balance. She had a wobble and then she fell inside the pot. Oh my goodness. So when Mr. Haktak came home, all he could see was Mrs. Haktak's legs sticking up of the pot. Help! Help! said Mrs. Haktak. So Mr. Haktak rushed over and he held onto her legs and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled. But when he finished pulling, he had not just 1 Mrs. Haktak, but 2 Mrs. Haktaks. Can you see? 1, 2. Oh my goodness me, thought Mr. Haktak. And the first Mrs. Haktak was very cross. She told Mr. Haktak that he had to put the second Mrs. Haktak back inside that pot. But Mr. Haktak said no, he was not going to put her in, because if he put Mrs. Haktak into the pot, he would then pull out even more Mrs. Haktaks. He would have 2 more again. So he backed away from the angry Mrs. Haktak. But then, oh my goodness, you won't believe what happened. Mr. Haktak himself fell into the pot. Oh no! cried Mrs. Haktak and the new Mrs. Haktak as they went to rescue him. They grabbed hold of his legs and they pulled and they pulled. But now they pulled out 2 Mr. Haktaks. Oh no! Now we've got double the trouble. Calm down, said the first Mrs. Haktak. This isn't a problem. Now we each have our own Mr. Haktak. Each Mr. Haktak has a Mrs. Haktak. And we can all be friends. Because we have got our magic pot, we will always have whatever we need. We'll have enough money to buy all the food that we can eat. And so they decided to build another house. one house. One house for the first Mr. and Mrs. Haktak, and another house for the second Mr. and Mrs. Haktak. And they had exactly the same things in each house, except for one house had the very special magic pot. And they lived happily ever after, but they were very, very careful to make sure that they never fell into the pot again. And that is the end of our story.